Hi there, welcome back to my channel Scrap and Coffee. In this video I have a new project for you. This version is not completely finished, but I'm going to start with the first tutorial in this video, and of course I wanted to give you an idea of what we are making. We are making a small chipboard covered folio that is designed for that older measurement of photos that is 5 by 3.5 inches. I think it's a really cute photo size. So I thought, let's create a small folio to accommodate that size of photos. I know there are still some websites where you can order that size to get them printed in that size. So I thought it was really fun. So I've made a cover and honestly I saw an image of somebody doing a cover like this, and she had like a band here where it was tied together, and I saw it somewhere on social media and it stayed in my mind, but I cannot find it anymore, so I don't know who it was. But it was inspired by somebody who did something like this. So I haven't finished my cover yet. I still need to work on the outside, but I've wrapped it with the solid cardstock that goes with the collection. And the collection that I'm working with is Gather at Home, the new release from Carta Bella. Really beautiful collection. And I used 2 sheets of the solid to wrap it, but in the tutorial you will see me using the black, and the reason for that is because I actually wanted to make the other one with a different color of the solids, but it cracked on me a little bit on the overlapping. I'm not sure if you can see that, but yeah, I didn't want that, so I decided to do the other one with the black. And then I will use the solid probably as a background on my outside cover. So when we open it, we don't do a lot here. We cannot bulk that up too much, so just some pattern paper. And then when we open it again, we have 2 areas where the action will be. So I still have to do my photo mats, my embellishments. I'm not done with this yet, but then at least you have an idea of what we are making. So we have 2 flaps here that can hold that cute size photo. I really like that photo size. And then these are with a little gusset, so we have a little bit of room here, and I've just created a little belly band here from the pattern paper to add some more photos. That's just for an idea. And then another photo will keep this in place. On the back of that page, it's a pretty simple basic design, but it's just a fun folio. We have a flap here that is held in place by this photo mat that's in here for now. And then we have a stacked pocket here and photo opportunity on the top flap. And then on the second page we have this element where I've made this as a closure. So in the other one I will do this with you. I was thinking I'm going to try to do that with you. So this opens up to the bottom, and then this opens up to the flap. You can put some photos here, you can stick it down or just have them loose in here, and it will stay in place with these ones. And then you can flip it up, and then I have photo opportunity there, and then you can also take this out of the pocket for another photo opportunity there. And I didn't do anything on the back to keep the bulk down a little bit in this pocket. So my pocket is a little bit crooked, so it takes me a little bit more effort to get it in there. Hopefully on the other one it's better. And then on the back side I did again the flap with the stack pocket, but in the other direction. So here a flap that can hold that photo size perfectly, and then we have a stack pocket here that I still need to fill up. And then on the back cover we have a flap here. I did a 3x4 journal card there for some embellishments, and then we have a portrait style waterfall. So again I still need to finish it up, and I did again a little belly band there with the pattern paper, and this is magnetized. So that's this side. And then here I have a really fun element, at least I think it's really fun. And I've used some frame turners as a swing tab here to keep this closed. So I place them down to open it up. I'm going to embellish this a little bit more, and then we can open this. And then we have a nice area for some loose photos in there. So this edge will stand up about 1 inch when it's opened up, so you cannot fill it up like 1 inch high because it will be flat when you lay it down, but this is basically what we get. And then when we close it again, it's almost flat. It will give you a bulk of about 1/4 inch. That's what I'm aiming for. So there is nothing in here yet, but you can put some photos or other stuff in there, flat stuff. So that is the folio that I will be making with you. This is the bulk that I have. My spines are about 1 inch, but you can easily increase them with 1/4 inch if you want to have a little bit more room for more embellishing. But yeah, mine is turning out pretty good here. But you can easily increase them, but you just have to increase both spines equally. So if you increase one with 1/4 inch, you have to do the other one as well 1/4 inch. So yeah, I have the first part of the tutorial ready for you, so that one is coming up right away. So I hope you enjoy this project. Okay, so let's start with that cover. So I have cut all my pieces of chipboard to size. You can find a cutting guide on my website, scrapandcoffee.com, and I have a link to the right page on my website for the cutting guide of this project down below in the description box. So I've cut my pieces of chipboard and I've put some tape on the back. Some of these pieces already had some tape because apparently I was planning on using it on something, but I didn't. Maybe I miscut. That happens to me quite a lot. And then I have 2 pieces of cardstock, 12 inch by 7.5 inches. And on one of these pieces I'm going to put some 3/8 inch tape because I'm going to connect these pieces. So I always like to use, yeah, I call that then the more traditional way of wrapping your cover. But if you prefer the easy wrap method, then it should not be a problem, I guess. So I'm going to connect these pieces together, just overlapping them about 1/2 inch, and give that a good burnish. And then we are going to see how our chipboard is going to lie on here, where our overlapping will end up. And I'm going to stay about 1 inch away from this edge because I want to have about 1 inch border all the way around. And don't worry, I will talk you through the order of your pieces because I'm already going wrong. And make sure that you have them in the right height. So this is what we need to do. So that would be perfect because our overlapping will be a good 1.5 inches away from the edge of this piece. So that's nice. Perfect. Okay, so we are going to start with our 4.5 inch piece. So 5.5 by 4.5. And on all your pieces, the 5.5 inch side is going to be the height. So I like to give myself a mark from the edge, 1 inch from the edge, to start placing my chipboard, and I will do the same thing on the bottom. I'm just gonna go roughly up to my overlapping because I'm gonna use my ruler anyway to place my pieces. So we're gonna start with the piece that is 4.5 in width, 5.5 high, and you can always make sure with your spine piece, for example, that you have it in the right orientation. And I have some smaller pieces of tape on here, which always takes a little longer to remove, but I will edit it a little bit for you. Okay, so I'm going to use the intersection of my pencil marks right here on my paper to place my first piece. I'll just bring it along the lines, try to get it as straight as I can. Place it down, and I'm going to use some spacing tape to determine the space of my chipboard, but you can do this in any way that works for you. Yeah, I suggest about 1/4 inch space to prevent cracking of your cardstock, especially now that the weather is getting colder and your heating is probably running. The air is a little bit more dry and your cardstock will dry out, and it has a higher risk of cracking on you. So the first spine piece that I'm placing is the larger of the two. So this one is the 1 1/8 inch piece, the wider one. So my other one is 1 inch smaller. So now I'm pushing up my ruler against the bottom of my first piece, and I'm going to use that and my spacing tape to place my second piece. And then again some spacing tape. And now we are going to place our first large piece. So you have two of these pieces that are 5.5 by 6.5. And we are going to place one of them. Okay, so again I'm using my ruler to line it up at the bottom. And my spacing tape. Give it a burnish. And then next up, our small spine piece, the 1-inch piece. And then we have one more large piece, and that will be our last piece that we need to place on here. Okay, so we have, I think it's a little over it's a little under 2 inch that I have left here, but I am going to cut that down to 1 inch just because I'm precise like that. But if this is okay with you, you can just leave it. I'm going to cut it down. Okay, next up, I like to mark where I'm going to miter my corners, because it helps me with determining how far I can place my tape or need to place my tape. So I'm not cutting on it yet, I'm just only marking it. And then this is something that I like to do, but you can do this in any way you prefer, right? I like to use a combination of 1/4 inch and 3/8 inch tape while I wrap my cover. Where did I put that thing? Oh, right here. So before I start, I will remove these tape backings. But most of the time I will save them, because if I am for some reason not able to continue on this, I can place them back and protect it a little bit from dust, etc. So for the 3/8 inch tape, I'm going to place that on the cardstock. I have my mark here for the miter. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but I'm just going to make sure that I start with my tape where I know that when I cut, I have a nice end-to-end coverage with tape on that angle. And I'm just bringing this along the cut edge of my cardstock. And I will do the same thing here. I just stop where I can see that I've gone past that pencil mark with my tape. Then with the 1/4 inch, that's going on the perimeter of my chipboard. So I'm going to place it along the bottom. So you can just pull it all the way. Personally, I don't do that. I really push my tape in my gusset areas. So that's a little bit more time consuming, but I just like to do it. I feel that it helps me with a better closing cover later on. So when you place tape over long parts like this, don't pull on it too hard. On your chipboard, that's probably not as much of a problem as it is on your cardstock. Okay, so I'm going to do this on all 4 sides. Okay, so when all the tape is on there, I'm going to make sure that I give it all a nice burnish for a good stick. And yes, it's a little bit of a long piece, so if your work surface is not as big just as mine, we have to get a little creative in how we work with this. And now I'm ready to actually miter the corners. So I'm just going to use my pencil line as a guide to cut off the corners. Okay, and then there is one more thing that I like to do before I start actual folding. I'm going to get a stylus or an embossing tool. I never know how to call these things. Score tool. And I'm pushing it into the cardstock, but really up against the chipboard edge. And again, these are just steps to prevent cracking of my cardstock. Also, I like to combine it with some wet glue. So let's get that ready. My bone folders. And then we can start folding. So I'm going to pre-fold it by just folding it on my work surface a little bit. And I always start on the long side, but it's completely up to you. I just like to be that all my corners are the same. So if I do one long side first, I will do the other side of the long side before I do the short sides. So all my corners look the same. So I'll pull back on this a little bit. And then with some wet glue, I'm going on the chipboard, but against the chipboard, on the cardstock, but against the chipboard edge. For a nice stick there as well. And now I'm going to burnish it, and I never like to go too fast. And just first I'm really pushing it up against the edge, and now I'm going to burnish it over. So if I place it a little bit on the diagonal, it fits on my work surface. In the middle, that's where I start sticking it down and work my way out. Okay, so this is one long side, so now I'm going to do the other long side. Okay, so now we're going to work on the short sides, but we have that little bit of overhang of our cardstock there. We need to fold that in for a nice clean corner. So I'm just pushing my bone folder up against my chipboard edge, and then I'm going to fold it in, and I like to use this bone folder for it. Fold it in, and then I'm going to make it as flat as I can. So I'm a little bit of a, I always call myself a little bit of a crazy person, but I'm going to change bone folders because I can give more pressure with this one to make it really flat. I'm always too precise. I know that I am, but I'm just not able to help myself. So a little bit of wet glue. Come on. And now we do the same thing. So first I'm burnishing it up against the chipboard edge, and then the glue helps it to stick down there as well a little bit, and then fold it over. So if you use a little bit too much glue on the edges there, it might ooze out a little bit. And now we are going to make sure that our corners here are how we want them to be. So if your cardstock sticks out a little bit, you can just bash it with your bone folder if you need to. That might help a little bit, but that is what we want to get. So I'm going to repeat that on this side. So if I'm not completely happy with my corner, like this one is not really bad, but I'm not completely happy, I just use my bone folder to just shape it in the way that I want it to be. And then I'm happy with it. Okay, so one more thing. With this bone folder, I'm just going to push the cardstock in my gusset areas. I never skip this part. I always do it in 2 steps basically. So I'm doing it right now, and once we cover it, once you do that with your binding system, or we are just going to use a piece of cardstock this time, I never skip the step of doing it right now as well. Just to train the cardstock, break down the fibers, and yeah, again, prevent cracking of your cardstock. So this is one side, and I'm going to do the other side as well. And don't push straight down, or I always do this. I'm really doing it, it's exaggerated now, but with an angle. Again, to prevent cracking of your, or basically ripping your cardstock. So once I've burnished it in there, I fold. It's quite flexible now, so you can really train your cardstock a little bit. And then we need to redo this once we've covered our spine parts with cardstock. So this is the cover. For backing this, let's see, what do we want? I'm going to back that's what I like to do, the spine parts, and then I'm going to cut a separate piece to cover my sections. I just like how that looks better, but if you don't mind, you can also just cut one piece, right? but I like to do this in sections. So I'm going to cut one piece, I think 4 inches, two pieces, 4 inches by 5¼ is what I'm going to do, because our pages are going to be 5¼ Okay, so 2 pieces, and I am going to cover this with double-sided tape. You can do this however you like. I really prefer to give this a good coverage with tape and then add some wet glue for wiggle time, but also for extra strength. And then especially if it's a binding, but I just don't want any air underneath these pieces, and then you have that really annoying sound when you open and close your album. Come on, you can... Oh, it doesn't want to rip. There we go. Okay, so just one at a time. I'm just going to remove all the tape backing, because I don't think it's really gonna work if I leave one piece on. So mostly for wiggle time, just a little bit of wet glue. I know not everybody likes to use wet glue on top of double-sided tape, but I just need it sometimes. So I'm basically just eyeballing this, and I'm centering it on the spine where I have about 1/8 of an inch space on top and bottom. I am dropping it, get my bone folder. I still have my finger underneath here, and I'm just burnishing it on my spine part. It probably will get a stick somewhere. That's okay, I'm not going to be able to prevent this fully now, that's fine. Okay, needed to close my glue there quickly. So what I'm going to do, my finger is underneath here, I'm going to find my gusset area, burnish my cardstock in my gusset area. And while I'm doing it, I'm going to slowly lift up my cover. Really push that in, that gusset. And as you will see, it will come up a little bit here, as long as it hasn't stuck down completely. And now I will, from my gusset, burnish it onto my cover. So again, this is something that I feel prevents cracking the cardstock, but also reduces the stress on the closing of your cover. So it's closing a little bit better, basically. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side in the gusset. So again, this is not stuck down yet. My wet glue helps me with that a little bit. So I am going to burnish it in that gusset area. Sorry if I'm shaking you in every direction, but lift up the cover while I'm pushing it in there. And now that I've done that, see again, it came up all the way because that cardstock just wanted to go in there. And you just break down your fibers and train your cardstock to go in there. Give it space to go in your gusset. And now we stick it down. There we go, that's one side. So I'm going to repeat, I don't know why I just turned the piece around, but I'm going to repeat the same thing right here. Okay, so I have those pieces in place, and now before I'm going to work on my pages, etc., for the short panel and for the middle panel, I'm going to cut a piece of cardstock to cover this neatly. For this one, I feel that we don't really need it. It's just going to be a waste of your cardstock with the element that we're going to push on there. So for this one, I will cut a piece 5 1/4 by 4 1/4, I guess. And then for here, it will be 5 1/4 by 6 1/4. Yes. Okay, so yeah, I like to use some double-sided tape along the perimeter of these pieces, and then again I will combine that with some wet glue to give it a nice stick all over. Okay, so I'm going to remove all the tape backing, combine it with some wet glue, and try to stick this piece down straight with a 1/8 inch border on all my sides. and just hope for the best. I didn't do this right. Ah! Of course I didn't do this right. To what did I cut this piece? Okay, there is hardly any tape left there, but I will just do a good amount of glue. It wasn't 4 1/4 basically, that's what it was. So not so much wiggle time, I need to hurry. There's something underneath there. Okay, not too bad. I hope I don't smoosh too much glue on my paper trimmer. I think I'm good. Okay, so this one was right, I've checked it, so I feel safe to stick it down. Okay, give it a good burnish. I don't want to have any air underneath this. And now we have a nice surface to work on and build our pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the pieces for the pages, and I will be back, I guess. Okay, I have the pieces for the first page, and flip over my pile, that's what I need to do. Our first piece is our piece A. So piece A has 2 score lines. You've placed your tape on the dented side between the cut edge and your 1/2 inch score line, and you will fold and burnish towards both on both score lines towards the bumpy side. So if I don't say anything about the tape position or how we fold, you fold towards the bumpy side unless stated otherwise, and the tape goes on the dented side unless stated otherwise. So this is what we have. And what I also did with this piece, I almost forgot to tell you, when I score, I turned it over to the bumpy side and I lined up my 1/2 inch score line somewhere in my scoreboard. I did it at the 6 inch mark, and then I've marked 1/4 inch away from the score line. So I did, in this case, 6 1/4. I turn it around and I do it again. So now I have to go the other way, so that's 5 3/4. I just made a little tick mark for myself. Oh, bumping it everywhere. So our pieces B and C are for the front of the page, but we are going to skip them for now. It's easier to start at the back. So I'm going to flip it over where we have the bumpy side facing us and our score lines on the right hand side. And then we have our pieces D, E and F. Those are for the back of this page. So piece D, 1 score line again, and I have tapered the 1/2 inch. So this is for hiding construction. So you are going to put your scissors just above the score line and cut with an angle towards the cut edge. And before I'm going to place this, I'm going to check if it fits from cut edge to the score line. And as you can see, my piece, well, maybe you're not able to see, but my piece is just going over the score line, and I don't want that, so I'm going to trim off a hair of this piece. So just a thin hair, and then I'm going to check again. I need to get my chair a little closer. Okay, and now my score line is nice and free, so that's what I want. Okay, so now I'm going to fold. And I'm going to line it up with the cut edge and the top. So what I did is I turned my piece and I'm lining it up with the cut edge and the top. Still making sure that I can see that score line. So I always remove my tape backing a little bit, then place it and hold it in place while I remove the tape backing. But there are a lot of ways to achieve this. So we have our flap in place here. Then we have our pieces E and F, and these are going to form a stacked pocket. So on piece piece E, you've placed your tape on 3 sides, and we are going to miter the corners where our score lines intersect. So just cut with about a 45-degree angle through that intersection there. Then piece F also has 3 score lines, but no tape on the long side, only tape on the short sides. Then I'm going to turn my piece. I'm going to cut just above the score line here on the side, that half-inch score line, up to the intersection. I'm going to turn my piece and I'm going to cut with an angle towards the intersection. So this is what I get. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So for piece F, I'm going to fold on the short sides only. We are just going to leave the bottom as it is. And then for piece E, you fold on all 3 score lines. So this is a shallow pocket. Okay, so getting our page back in, I open up the flap. And I'm going to place piece E along the bottom, and this should fit from your cut edge up to the score line. Again, please don't go over your score line. I recently did that in a project and it doesn't make you happy. It just won't fold the way you want it anymore. Remove that tape backing there, and now I can stick it to the sides. And then piece F, we can slide that half-inch in the pocket up to the score line. You might still see that score line a little bit, and then line it up on the sides. Now I remove the tape backing on both sides, and I'm just going to slide in that half-inch. And at this point you might want to get a piece of scrap paper or maybe a paper clip, but I have a nice 4x4 white mat here. So we're going to close the flap. We have a nice stack pocket. Both go all the way to the bottom, or at least. And then when we close the flap, you have about a 1/8 inch gap between your flap and your pocket. And I'm still struggling with light here, but it's yeah, I'm trying to get it better, but it's hard. So that will keep that closed for now. So now we can work on the front side. So turn it over. Your flaps of piece A will now be on the left hand side. And we will get back to our pieces B and C. So your pieces B are going to form flaps. And you have 2 score lines here with a little 1/8 inch gusset. I've tapered the half-inch flap from your half-inch score line towards the cut edge. So you're not going to cut in that gusset area. And we can fold on both score lines. And I'm going to leave it folded on the half-inch score line. So I need to do that for this one. So I'm just above the half-inch score line is where I taper. And then leave it folded on your half-inch score line. So your gusset is visible on top, and you only have your half-inch flap on the bottom. So my first piece, I'm going to line it up here. So what am I going to do with piece A? I'm going to fold it in where the gusset area is underneath, which is a little bit harder now with the pockets on the back. And then I'm going to line up my half-inch score line. I'm folded on that with the folded edge here of piece A. So this is the tricky one. So I'm lining up top, bottom and that folded edge best as I can. Hold it in place. And burnish that. And now I can lay this flat again. So that's one. And then the second one I'm going to align along the cut edge on the other side. now we are going to make our gussets stand up, so just push back on that. And these flaps have a little bit of an overlapping. So if you want to, you can leave it like this, use a magnet or a swing tab, something to keep them closed. But I'm going to use piece C for it. So this is a square piece. You scored 1/2 inch on all sides. I've placed my tape from score line to score line because basically that's all what you need. I'm going to get a paper trimmer in. So here it is, and I'm going to cut this piece on the diagonal. So really simple. Just line up 2 corners and cut it into half. And then what I will do is right here, I'm going to miter. So where the score lines still form an intersection, you're going to cut with a 45-degree angle. And I will do the same thing on this piece. And now I can fold all my flaps and they are going to stick out, right? Burnish that, and then I will just cut off this flap. And basically what I do is I put my scissors here and then I angle it a little bit outwards so I don't cut into my actual piece. At least that's what I'm trying to do, right? And I will do the same thing for this one. Okay, so those are going to form small pockets on top of our flaps. So to make it easy for attaching, I'm going to get my first piece B. So I have my attachment flaps there. I'm going to open this up as best as I can. I'm going to get one of the pockets and the corner is going to align here. But your gusset area is going to stay free. So you're going to have that 1/8 of an inch space there. And then align it with the bottom and basically your 5/8 inch score line. I will show it up close in a second. Okay, so once you've done this, then this is what that looks like. So you have that space there. So when we close this, then we're fine. And when we close the other flap on top, again, you still have some space between this flap and the corner of that pocket. So for the other one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to lift that one up, lay it completely flat. And again, make sure that you don't stick it on your gusset, that you have that 1/8 inch space there. So there we have it. And now you can decide for yourself which flap you want to have on top. It doesn't matter. And you can fit a 6x4 photo in this pocket. Maybe you need to crop your background mat a little bit and then maybe your photo as well. But this is a 6x4 photo mat, which I would normally give a black back cover, a little bit bigger. But I maybe have to make that a little bit smaller. But this will keep all of that closed. And this is actually page 1. And page 1 we are going to attach in our cover. But you can decide if you want to do that right now or if you want to decorate first. And I think I'm just going to attach it. It doesn't really matter. So what am I going to do? I'm going to fold on my 1/2 inch score line. So you have your 5/8 inch gusset showing there. And I'm going to align it basically with the edge of the black paper that I've placed here to cover this chipboard part there. Just make sure that you're straight. That's all. So I'm doing the same thing as I'm doing with all my flaps. Okay, just hold it in place. And then I will open it up and burnish it. And now my pencil marks here are showing, and that's going to help me with placing page number 2 in later on. But I think for this video, this is where we're going to end it. And then in the next video, we will continue with page number 2 and our element for this side. So for now, thank you for watching, and I hope you will join me in part 2. Bye bye!